Her husband threw her out after she gave birth. Her billionaire ex was waiting outside. Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Patricia Wildevids thought she had chosen security when she married Thomas Henderson 5 years ago in their quiet town of Millbrook Falls, Pennsylvania. She thought leaving behind David Jones, the ambitious dreamer who wanted to change the world, was the mature decision. She was wrong about everything. Now clutching her 3-week-old daughter Lisa against her chest on a park bench, rain soaking through her thin jacket, she understood the difference between safety and prison. Behind her, the Victorian house where Thomas had just thrown her out stood like a monument to her shattered illusions. His mother's venomous words still echoed, "A girl is useless to this family." But as the sleek black sedan pulled to the curb and the window rolled down, Patricia discovered that sometimes the past returns exactly when you need it most. The man in the back seat was not the broke college student she remembered. This was David Jones, tech billionaire, whose face graced magazine covers. And he was looking at her like she was still his entire world. "Get out!" Thomas Henderson stood in the doorway of their bedroom, his face twisted with disgust as Patricia struggled to sit up in bed, still weak from giving birth 3 weeks ago. "Pack your things and get out. Both of you." Patricia stared at her husband, certain she had misheard. "Thomas, what are you talking about? I just had a baby. Your baby." "My baby," he laughed bitterly. "My baby would have been a son. A Henderson heir. This..." He gestured dismissively toward the bassinet where Lisa slept peacefully. "This is nothing but a burden." The bedroom door opened wider, and Thomas's mother, Eleanor Henderson, appeared behind him like a crow in her black dress. "We gave you one job, Patricia. One simple job. Produce a male heir for this family. Instead, you give us a useless girl." Patricia felt the world tilting around her. "She is not useless. She is your granddaughter." "She is a disappointment," Eleanor snapped, "just like her mother. Thomas, your father and I have discussed this. The girl has proven she cannot fulfill her obligations to this family. It is time to correct our mistake." Thomas nodded, his weak chin trembling with what Patricia recognized as relief. He had never wanted to be married, had only done so because his parents demanded grandchildren. Now he had an excuse to abandon responsibility entirely. "You have 30 minutes, he said without meeting her eyes. "Take whatever you can carry. The house belongs to my family. You have no claim here." Patricia's hand shook as she reached for Lisa, lifting her daughter protectively. "Thomas, please, I have nowhere to go. No money. You cannot just throw us out on the street." "I can do whatever I want. You are no longer my concern." He turned away, then paused. "Oh, and Patricia, do not bother trying to contact any lawyers. The Henderson family has arrangements with every attorney in 3 counties. You will find no help here." The door slammed shut, leaving Patricia alone with her newborn daughter in the room that had been her prison for 5 years. Through the thin walls, she could hear Eleanor Henderson making phone calls, ensuring that every door in Millbrook Falls would be closed to Patricia and her child. 30 minutes later, Patricia stood on the sidewalk in front of the imposing Victorian house, holding a diaper bag and $43 in cash. Lisa whimpered in her arms, sensing her mother's distress. The October wind cut through Patricia's thin sweater, and she realized she had forgotten to pack a coat in her panic. The front door opened one final time. Eleanor Henderson appeared, holding a small cardboard box. "You forgot these," she said coldly, setting the box on the porch steps. Inside, Patricia could see her few pieces of jewelry, her college diploma, and a handful of photographs. "Do not come back. Do not contact us. You are no longer part of this family." The door closed with finality. Patricia heard the deadbolt slide into place. She walked slowly toward downtown Millbrook Falls, each step taking her further from the only life she had known for 5 years. The town that had once felt like home now felt hostile. Behind curtained windows, she could sense neighbors watching, whispering. The Henderson family controlled too much in this small town. Their word would spread quickly. By the time she reached Riverside Park, Patricia could no longer feel her fingers. Lisa was crying now, hungry and cold. Patricia sat heavily on a bench near the old gazebo where she had spent countless hours as a teenager, dreaming of a different life. She fumbled in the diaper bag for a bottle, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. As she fed Lisa, tears began streaming down her cheeks. She had never felt so completely alone. "What am I going to do, sweetheart?" she whispered to her daughter. "Where are we going to go?" The rain started then, light at first, then heavier. Patricia pulled her sweater over Lisa's head, trying to shield her from the drops. She had no car, no credit cards, no friends who would dare cross the Henderson family. She had $43 and a baby who needed everything. For the first time since Lisa's birth, Patricia allowed herself to think about David Jones. 7 years ago, she had chosen Thomas Henderson over David because Thomas offered stability, security, a future mapped out in careful detail. David had offered dreams, adventure, uncertainty. Patricia had been 25 and terrified of taking risks. Now, sitting in the rain with her newborn daughter, she wondered where David was, what he was doing. Probably married with children of his own, probably never thought about the girl who had broken his heart in college. The rain grew heavier, and Lisa's cries became more urgent. Patricia stood, looking desperately around the empty park for any kind of shelter. The black sedan appeared through the rain like something from a dream. Patricia watched it approach, moving slowly down Park Avenue as if the driver was searching for something. The car was expensive, foreign, the kind of vehicle no one in Millbrook Falls could afford. It stopped directly in front of her bench. Patricia clutched Lisa closer, suddenly aware of how she must look, wet, disheveled, desperate, the kind of woman people cross the street to avoid. She considered running, but where could she go? The rear window rolled down with an electric whisper. "Patricia." The voice stopped her heart. She knew that voice, had heard it in her dreams for 7 years. Slowly, she turned toward the car. David Jones sat in the back seat, his dark hair now shorter, more refined, but his eyes were exactly as she remembered. Those warm brown eyes that had always seen straight through to her soul. "David?" The word came out as barely a whisper. He was already moving, opening the car door and stepping out into the rain. He wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than Patricia had spent on clothes in the past year, but he did not seem to care as the rain soaked through the fabric. "My God, Patricia, what are you doing out here?" She could not speak, could not explain, could barely breathe. This was David, but not David. This man had presence, authority, the kind of confidence that came from success. His face had appeared on magazine covers. She realized with shock. This was David Jones of Nexus Technologies, the billionaire entrepreneur who had revolutionized cloud computing. But when he looked at her, she saw the same gentle concern that had made her fall in love with him in college. "You are soaked," he said, noticing her shivering. His eyes fell to the bundle in her arms. "Is that—" "My daughter," Patricia managed. "Lisa." Something passed across his face. Surprise, perhaps sadness. She could not tell. "Patricia, what happened? Why are you sitting in the park in the rain with a baby?" Before she could answer, Lisa began crying again, a thin wail that cut through the sound of rainfall. Patricia tried to soothe her, but her own distress was making everything worse. "Come on," David said firmly. "Get in the car." We need to get you both warm and dry. I cannot. Patricia started, but her voice broke. She could not explain about Thomas, about the Henderson family, about how she had nowhere to go and no one to turn to. David stepped closer, his voice gentle but urgent. Patricia, you are both going to get hypothermia if you stay out here. Please, let me help. He gestured toward the car, where Patricia could see the driver waiting patiently. The interior looked warm and dry, impossibly luxurious compared to the park bench. I do not have anywhere else to go, she admitted quietly. Then come with me, David said simply. No questions, no explanations needed right now. Just get in the car. Patricia hesitated for one more moment, looking back toward the Victorian house that had been her home. All the windows were dark now, as if the Henderson family had already erased her from their lives completely. She looked down at Lisa, who had stopped crying and was staring up at her with solemn blue eyes that looked remarkably like her own. Okay, Patricia whispered. David helped her into the back seat, his hand warm and steady on her elbow. As soon as she settled into the leather seat, she felt the car's heat enveloping her like a blessing. Lisa immediately relaxed, sensing the change in temperature. David slid in beside her, maintaining a respectful distance but close enough that she could feel his presence. He spoke quietly to the driver. The Grandview Hotel, please, Marcus. As the car pulled away from Riverside Park, Patricia caught sight of herself in the window reflection. She looked like exactly what she was, a woman who had lost everything, but for the first time in weeks, she did not feel completely alone. Thank you, she said softly. David turned to look at her, and she saw something in his expression that made her chest tighten with emotion. You do not have to thank me, Patricia. Not ever. The Grandview Hotel sat on a hill overlooking Millbrook Falls like a castle from another era. Patricia had driven past it countless times, but never imagined stepping inside. It was the kind of place where senators and movie stars stayed when they visited the region, all marble and crystal and quiet luxury. Mr. Jones, the concierge greeted David as they entered the lobby. Your suite is ready. Is there anything else you require this evening? Yes, David replied without hesitation. I need the hotel boutique opened immediately. And contact Dr. Sarah Mitchell. Tell her I have a new mother and infant who need medical attention. Nothing urgent, just a wellness check. Patricia started to protest. David, that is not necessary. It is absolutely necessary, he said gently but firmly. When was the last time you ate? When did you last sleep for more than 2 hours at a time? She could not remember. The past 3 weeks had been a blur of sleepless nights, feeding schedules, and growing tension with Thomas and his family. She'd been operating on pure adrenaline and determination. The elevator rose silently to the penthouse floor. David used a key card to open double doors that revealed a suite larger than the entire first floor of the Henderson house. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the valley where lights twinkled like fallen stars. I know it is overwhelming, David said, noticing her expression. But you need space right now, privacy, time to figure out what comes next. Patricia stood in the middle of the living room, still holding Lisa, feeling completely out of place. Everything in the suite was elegant, expensive, perfect. She was afraid to touch anything. David, I cannot afford this. I only have $43. He turned to face her fully, and she saw a flash of something that might have been anger in his eyes. Not at her, she realized, but at whatever had brought her to this point. You are not paying for anything, he said quietly. You are my guest, for as long as you need. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. David opened it to reveal a woman in her 50s carrying medical bags and what appeared to be shopping bags from expensive stores. Dr. Mitchell, David said. Thank you for coming so quickly. Of course. The doctor's smile was warm and professional. You must be Patricia, and this beautiful girl must be Lisa. Over the next hour, Dr. Mitchell conducted gentle examinations of both Patricia and Lisa, pronouncing them healthy but exhausted. The doctor's manner was kind but thorough, and Patricia found herself relaxing for the first time in weeks. "Everything looks good," Dr. Mitchell concluded, "but you need rest, proper nutrition, and time to heal. New mothers often push themselves too hard." After the doctor left, David showed Patricia to the master bedroom, where someone had laid out clothes in her size: soft sweaters, comfortable jeans, warm pajamas, everything she needed. "How did you know my size?" she asked, amazed. David's cheeks colored slightly. "I remembered. Some things you do not forget." The simple statement hung between them, loaded with 7 years of history and unspoken feelings. Patricia felt her heart flutter in a way it had not since college. "There is a crib being delivered for Lisa," David continued, his voice carefully neutral, "and formula, diapers, whatever else you need. I had my assistant arrange everything." "David, this is too much. I cannot accept all of this." He stopped in the doorway, his back to her. "Patricia, I need you to understand something. 7 years ago, you broke my heart, completely shattered it. I spent 2 years thinking I would never recover." Patricia felt tears pricking her eyes. "David, but even then, even when I was angry and hurt and convinced I hated you, if you had needed help, I would have been there. Do you understand? You could have called me at 3 in the morning from anywhere in the world, and I would have come. That has never changed." He turned to face her, and she saw the same intensity that had drawn her to him in college. "So do not worry about money or debt or what you owe me. You do not owe me anything. You never have. I am here because—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Because some people matter more than pride or hurt feelings or the past. You matter, Patricia. You have always mattered." Before she could respond, he was gone, closing the door softly behind him. Patricia stood alone in the luxurious bedroom, holding her daughter, feeling like her entire world had shifted on its axis once again. But this time, for the first time in years, the shift felt like hope. Patricia woke to sunlight streaming through silk curtains and the sound of Lisa gurgling contentedly in the crib beside the bed. For a moment, she forgot where she was, and panic fluttered in her chest. Then she remembered David, the hotel, the safety of walls that did not belong to the Henderson family. She had slept for 8 uninterrupted hours. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She could not remember the last time she had slept so deeply, so peacefully. Even before Lisa's birth, she had spent months lying awake in the Henderson house, feeling like an intruder in her own bedroom. Lisa was staring up at a mobile that had not been there the night before. Delicate butterflies that danced in the morning light. Someone had been in the room while Patricia slept, caring for her daughter, making sure she was safe. A soft knock on the door made her sit up quickly. "Patricia." David's voice was carefully respectful. "Are you awake?" "Yes," she called, suddenly conscious of her appearance. The silk pajamas someone had provided were beautiful, but unfamiliar, making her feel like she was playing dress-up. "There is breakfast when you are ready. No rush." She heard his footsteps moving away, giving her privacy to collect herself. The thoughtfulness of the gesture made her chest tighten with emotion. Thomas had never been considerate of her need for space or time. 20 minutes later, she emerged from the bedroom carrying Lisa, who was alert and peaceful in a way that seemed miraculous after weeks of constant crying. David stood at the kitchen counter, fully dressed in dark jeans and a sweater that emphasized his broad shoulders. He was reading something on his phone, but he looked up immediately when she entered. "Good morning," he said, and his smile was warm but careful, as if he was trying not to overwhelm her. "How did you sleep?" Better than I have in months, she admitted. Thank you for everything. The mobile, checking on Lisa. I did not check on Lisa, David said, looking puzzled. I would never enter your room without permission. But someone... Patricia looked around the suite, suddenly noticing details she had missed the night before. Fresh flowers on every table, a basket of baby supplies she had not seen yesterday, children's books stacked on the coffee table. My assistant, Caroline, took care of those things, David explained. She has 3 children of her own. She said new mothers need to know their babies are safe so they can actually rest. The casual mention of his assistant's children reminded Patricia that David now lived in a world of employees and staff, people who anticipated his needs and solved problems before he even knew they existed. It was a strange thought. Caroline sounds wonderful. She also selected some career clothes from Nordstrom in case you decide you want to start looking for work. No pressure, just options. Patricia felt that flutter of panic again. Work. She would need a job, an apartment, a way to support herself and Lisa independently. The reality of her situation came rushing back. David seemed to sense her distress. Patricia, you do not have to figure everything out today, or this week, or this month. You just went through something traumatic. Give yourself time to heal. I cannot stay here indefinitely, David. This is not real life. This is... She gestured around the elegant suite. This is fantasy. This is my life, he said quietly, and right now you are part of it. The statement sent warmth through her chest that she tried to ignore. David was being kind, nothing more. She could not allow herself to read more into his generosity than simple compassion for someone he had once cared about. But as she watched him expertly prepare a bottle for Lisa, his movements confident and gentle, she could not help but remember why she had fallen in love with him in the first place. David had always been the kind of person who took care of others naturally, without making a show of it. You are good with babies, she observed. My sister has 4 children. I have had practice. He tested the temperature of the formula on his wrist, then handed her the bottle. Maya always said, I would make a good father someday. The comment hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither of them was ready to address. Tell me about your sister, Patricia said, settling into a chair to feed Lisa. I remember Maya from college. Is she happy? Very happy. She married her college boyfriend, became a teacher, lives in the suburbs with her chaos and loves every minute of it. David poured coffee for both of them, adding cream to hers exactly the way she had always preferred it. She asks about you sometimes. She does. Maya never understood why you chose Thomas Henderson over me. She said anyone could see Thomas was weak. Patricia winced. He seemed safe at the time, predictable. I thought that was what I wanted. And now? The question was asked casually, but Patricia could hear the weight behind it. She looked down at Lisa, who was drinking her bottle with single-minded determination. Now, I know the difference between safety and security, between being protected and being controlled. She met David's eyes. I made a lot of mistakes, David. I hurt you, and I hurt myself, and I ended up in a situation where I could not even protect my own daughter. You protected her when it mattered most, David said firmly. You chose her over everything else. That took courage. It took desperation. Sometimes those are the same thing. By the 3rd day, Patricia had begun to relax into the rhythm of life in the suite without quite meaning to. David left each morning for meetings, giving her space and privacy, but returned by early afternoon with a quiet intensity that made her think he was rearranging his schedule around her needs. He never made her feel like a burden. When Lisa cried, he offered to help without taking over. When Patricia needed to shower, he entertained the baby with a patience that amazed her. When she grew restless and wanted to walk, He suggested routes through the hotel gardens where they would not encounter other guests. Everything he did was thoughtful, considerate, designed to help her heal without pressure or expectation. It was exactly the opposite of her marriage to Thomas. "You do not have to keep rearranging your life for us," she told him on Wednesday afternoon as they sat in the garden, Lisa sleeping peacefully in a carrier between them. "I am not rearranging anything," David replied, but she could see from his phone that he had been fielding messages from his office all day. "David, you run a billion-dollar company. You cannot just disappear for days at a time." "I can do whatever I want," he said with a slight smile. "That is one of the advantages of being the boss." But Patricia could see the stress in the way he held his shoulders, the frequency with which he checked his messages. He was sacrificing important things to take care of her, and the knowledge made her feel guilty and grateful in equal measure. "What brought you back to Millbrook Falls anyway?" she asked. "Business?" Something flickered across his face. "Not exactly business, no." "Then what?" David was quiet for a long moment, watching Lisa sleep. "I was driving back from a conference in Pittsburgh. I could have taken the highway, but I decided to come through town instead." He paused. "I wanted to see the park, Riverside Park, where we used to sit and plan our future." His voice grew softer. "I know it sounds ridiculous, but I was thinking about you, wondering if you were happy, if you had children, if—" He shrugged. "If you ever thought about me—" Patricia felt her heart skip. "You were thinking about me." "I think about you more than I should," he admitted, "more than I want to. I thought seeing the place where we used to dream together might help me finally put those feelings to rest. And instead, you found me sitting there in the rain. Instead, I found you sitting there in the rain." David turned to look at her directly. "Patricia, what happened really happened. Thomas Henderson seemed like a decent man when you were dating. Boring maybe, but decent." Patricia had been dreading this conversation, but she owed David the truth. Over the next hour, she told him everything, about the gradual erosion of her marriage, about Thomas's weakness in the face of his parents' demands, about the increasing pressure to produce a male heir, about the cruelty that had followed Lisa's birth. David listened without interruption, his expression growing darker with each detail. "They threw you out with a newborn baby," he said finally, his voice tight with controlled anger. "In October. In the rain. Eleanor Henderson made it clear I was no longer welcome in their family. And Thomas allowed this." It was not a question, but Patricia answered anyway. Thomas was relieved to have an excuse to end the marriage. He never wanted the responsibility of a wife and child. David was quiet for several minutes, his hands clenched in his lap. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. "Patricia, I need you to know something. What they did to you was not just cruel, it was illegal. You have rights as Lisa's mother, rights to support and property. Thomas cannot simply discard you like garbage." He said the Henderson family has arrangements with every lawyer in 3 counties. The Henderson family may have influence in Millbrook Falls, but they do not control the legal system. David's voice carried a note of steel she had never heard before. "If you want to fight them, I can help. If you want to walk away and never look back, I can help with that too. But you do have choices, Patrick, more choices than they want you to believe." The use of her old nickname, the one only David had ever called her, made tears spring to her eyes. She had forgotten how it felt to have someone believe in her, support her, treat her like she mattered. "I do not want to fight them," she said quietly. "I just want to build a life for Lisa. A good life, away from all that toxicity. Then that is what we will do," David said simply. The word "we" hung in the air between them, full of possibility and danger. Patricia knew she could not allow herself to depend on David's kindness indefinitely, but for now, for this moment, it felt like the most beautiful word in the world. On Friday evening, David knocked on her bedroom door with an unusual formality that immediately put Patricia on alert. "There is someone here to see you," he said when she opened the door. "Thomas Henderson." Patricia felt the blood drain from her face. "He is here, in the hotel. He is in the lobby, demanding to speak with you. Hotel security is with him." David's expression was carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in his jaw. "You do not have to see him if you do not want to. I can have him removed from the property." Patricia looked back at Lisa, who was napping peacefully in her crib, then at David's concerned face. The idea of facing Thomas made her stomach clench with anxiety, but she knew this confrontation was inevitable. "I will see him," she said quietly, "but not alone." "I will be right there with you," David promised. They took the elevator down to the lobby in silence. Patricia could see Thomas before the doors opened, pacing near the concierge desk like a caged animal. He looked smaller than she remembered, diminished somehow by the grandeur of the hotel surroundings. When he saw her, his face twisted with an expression that might have been relief or anger. "Patricia," he said, striding toward her. "There you are. We need to talk." "Hello, Thomas." Patricia was surprised by how calm her voice sounded. "What do you want?" "What do I want?" Thomas laughed harshly. "I want to know why my wife is living in a hotel with another man. I want to know why the entire town is talking about Patricia Henderson and her billionaire boyfriend." "Ex-wife," David corrected quietly. "Patricia is your ex-wife. You made that clear when you threw her out of your house." Thomas's gaze swung to David, and Patricia saw him struggle to process the reality of David Jones, tech billionaire, standing in front of him. "This is none of your business, Jones," Thomas said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Everything concerning Patricia is my business," David replied evenly. "Patricia is my wife, the mother of my child. She belongs with me." "No!" The word came out stronger than Patricia had expected. "I do not belong to you, Thomas. I never did. You made sure I understood that when you called Lisa a burden and threw us both out in the rain. I was upset. I said things I did not mean." "You meant every word," Patricia said, feeling a strength she had forgotten she possessed. "Just like your mother meant every word when she called my daughter useless." Thomas's face flushed red. "My mother was protecting the family interests. We need a male heir." "You need help," David said coldly. "Both of you. Professional help. Do not lecture me about family, Jones. You do not understand what it means to carry on a legacy." "I understand what it means to treat people with basic human decency," David replied. "Something you seem to have forgotten." Thomas turned back to Patricia, his expression shifting from anger to something that might have been desperation. "Patricia, please, come home. We can work this out. I know I made mistakes, but we can fix this. We are married. We have a child together." "We had a child together," Patricia corrected. "Lisa is my daughter. She will never be part of your family's legacy because your family does not deserve her. You cannot just walk away from our marriage." "You walked away first," Patricia said, feeling tears threaten but keeping her voice steady. "You walked away the moment you chose your parents' approval over your wife and daughter." Thomas stood there for a moment, seeming to deflate. Patricia could see him searching for arguments, for leverage, for some way to regain control of the situation. Finally, he played his last card. "I will file for custody," he said. "A judge will never give a child to a mother who abandons her marriage to live with her lover." The words hit Patricia like a physical blow, but before she could respond, David stepped forward. "Mr. Henderson," he said, his voice quiet but carrying absolute authority. "I suggest you consult with your attorney before making threats you cannot back up. Patricia has documentation of your abandonment. She has witness statements about your family's treatment of her. She has medical records showing the stress-related health issues she developed during your marriage." Thomas's eyes widened. "What documentation? What witnesses? Did you think no one noticed how unhappy she was, Thomas? Did you think your neighbors did not see your mother's cruelty? Did you think doctors do not keep records of domestic stress indicators?" Patricia stared at David in amazement. When had he gathered all this information? "Furthermore," David continued, "any attorney worth their degree will tell you that a man who throws his wife and newborn child out of their home in a rainstorm will have difficulty convincing a judge he deserves custody of that child." Thomas looked between them, his face cycling through anger, fear, and finally defeat. "This is not over," he said weakly. "Yes, it is," Patricia said with quiet finality. "It has been over for a long time. I just did not have the courage to admit it until now." Thomas Henderson walked out of the Grandview Hotel lobby, and Patricia knew she would never see him again. As the elevator doors closed behind them, David took her hand gently. "Are you all right?" Patricia looked down at their joined hands, feeling the warmth and strength in David's fingers. "I think I might be," she said. "For the first time in years, I think I might actually be all right." The silence in the elevator felt different now, charged with something Patricia could not quite name. David still held her hand, and she found herself reluctant to pull away. His skin was warm, his grip gentle but steady, exactly as she remembered from college when he used to take her hand during movies or long walks across campus. "How did you know about documentation and witnesses?" she asked as they rose toward the penthouse. David's thumb moved across her knuckles in a gesture that seemed unconscious. "I made some calls yesterday. I hope you do not mind. I wanted to understand your legal position in case Thomas tried something like this. You have been planning for this conversation." "I have been planning for several possible conversations," David admitted. "Thomas Henderson struck me as the type of man who would not let go gracefully." The elevator doors opened, and they walked into the suite together. Patricia could hear Lisa stirring in the bedroom, making the soft sounds that meant she would wake soon for her evening feeding. "I should check on her," Patricia said, but she made no move to let go of David's hand. "Patricia," his voice was quiet, serious. "There is something else we need to discuss." She turned to face him fully, noting the way the lamplight caught the grey threads in his dark hair. When had those appeared? In college, his hair had been purely black, thick and unruly. Now it was shorter, more controlled, but those silver strands spoke of years and experiences she had not shared. "What is it?" "I have been thinking about your situation, your future. You need more than just temporary shelter." David released her hand and moved toward the windows, looking out over the valley lights. "You need independence, security, a way to build the life you want for yourself and Lisa." Patricia felt her stomach tighten. "David, if you are trying to find a gentle way to ask me to leave—" "No." He turned quickly, his expression almost fierce. "No, that is not what I am saying at all." "I'm saying the opposite." "Then what are you saying?" David ran a hand through his hair, a familiar gesture that took Patricia back 20 years. "I am saying I want to offer you a job." "A job?" "Nexus Technologies needs a director of community outreach, someone to oversee our charitable giving, our educational initiatives, our partnerships with local organizations." David's voice grew more confident as he spoke. "The position would be based here in Pennsylvania, with travel as needed, full benefits, competitive salary, stock options. You would have autonomy to shape the program according to your vision." Patricia stared at him, processing the offer. David, I have not worked in 5 years. My degree is in English literature. I have no experience in corporate philanthropy. You have something more valuable than experience. You have compassion. You understand what it means to need help, to feel powerless, to have nowhere to turn. David moved closer, his eyes intense. You could build programs that actually make a difference in people's lives. The offer was generous, more generous than she had any right to expect. It would give her financial independence, professional purpose, a way to support herself and Lisa without relying on anyone else's charity. It would also mean staying in David's orbit indefinitely. Is this a real job offer, or is this your way of taking care of me without making me feel like charity? David's jaw tightened. It is a real job offer. I would not patronize you with false employment. But you would offer this position to me if we did not have history. Honestly, probably not. I would probably look for someone with more corporate experience. David met her eyes steadily. But I would be an idiot to let credentials matter more than character. You are exactly what this program needs, Patricia. What I need. The last 3 words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning. Neither of them was ready to examine too closely. Lisa's cries from the bedroom broke the moment. Patricia moved toward the sound, grateful for the distraction, but David's voice stopped her. You do not have to answer now. Think about it. But Patricia, I meant what I said earlier. Some people matter more than pride or hurt feelings. You matter to me. You have always mattered. Patricia looked back at him, standing silhouetted against the windows, and felt something shift inside her chest. Something that had been frozen for years was beginning to thaw. I will think about it, she promised. As she went to tend to Lisa, Patricia realized that for the first time since college, she was thinking about a future that included more than mere survival. Saturday morning brought October sunshine that turned the hotel gardens into a masterpiece of autumn color. Patricia sat on a bench near the fountain, watching David push Lisa's stroller along the gravel paths with the careful attention of someone determined not to make a mistake. He had surprised her at breakfast by announcing that he had arranged for a stroller, car seat, and other baby equipment to be delivered overnight. You cannot carry her everywhere, he had said when she protested the expense. Besides, she should see the world, experience things. Now, watching him navigate the walkways with Lisa's stroller, Patricia felt an emotion she was afraid to name. David looked natural with the baby, protective and gentle in a way that made her chest tight with longing. She likes the movement, David called, noting how Lisa had settled into peaceful alertness as the stroller rolled over the textured paths. She has always been calmer when she is moving, Patricia replied. The nurses at the hospital said some babies are like that. David returned to the bench, parking the stroller so Lisa could see the fountain's dancing water. Tell me about the hospital, about her birth. If you want to, I mean... Patricia had not talked about Lisa's birth with anyone. Thomas had been present but distracted, more concerned with the baby's gender than the experience itself. His family had focused entirely on their disappointment over not getting a grandson. It was long, she said finally. 26 hours of labor. I kept thinking something was wrong because it was taking so long, but the nurses said first babies often take their time. Were you scared? Terrified? The admission came easily. Thomas kept pacing and checking his phone. His mother kept asking the nurses if they were sure about the baby's gender, as if they might have made a mistake on the ultrasound. David's expression darkened. They were focused on the wrong things. When Lisa finally arrived, she was so small, so perfect. She had this full head of dark hair and these serious blue eyes, and she looked at me like she was trying to figure out who I was. Patricia smiled at the memory. I fell in love instantly, completely. It was like nothing I'd ever felt before. And Thomas? Patricia's smile faded. Thomas asked the nurse if we could try again right away. He wanted to know how soon I could get pregnant again, how we could increase the chances of having a boy next time. While you were still in the delivery room, while I was still holding Lisa for the first time. Patricia looked down at her daughter, who was waving her tiny fists at the fountain spray. That was when I knew my marriage was really over. Even if it took me 3 more weeks to admit it. David was quiet for several minutes, his gaze fixed on Lisa's animated movements. "She is perfect," he said finally. "Any man who cannot see that is a fool." "David," Patricia started, then stopped. She had been about to say something about how different things might have been if Lisa were his daughter, but the thought was too dangerous, too loaded with possibility and regret. "What?" "Nothing. Thank you. For seeing her, really seeing her. Thomas's family made me feel like there was something wrong with having a daughter, like I had failed at the most basic level. There is nothing wrong with you, Patricia. Nothing wrong with Lisa. You are both exactly as you should be." The conviction in his voice made tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back, focusing on Lisa's peaceful expression. "I have been thinking about your job offer," she said, changing the subject to safer ground. "And it scares me." David turned to face her fully. "What scares you about it?" "Everything. Working for you. Being dependent on you in a different way. The possibility that I might fail and prove Thomas's family right about me being worthless. Patricia, look at me." She met his eyes, seeing the same intensity that had drawn her to him in college. "You are not worthless. You have never been worthless. You are intelligent, compassionate, strong enough to walk away from a toxic situation with nothing but your daughter and your dignity. Any company would be lucky to have you." "But would they? Really? Or are you offering me this position because of what we used to mean to each other?" David considered the question seriously. "Both," he said finally. "I am offering you this position because I know your character, your values, your heart. Yes, our history factors into that knowledge. But Patricia, successful businesses are not built on charity or sentiment. If I did not believe you could excel at this job, I would not offer it to you." A couple walked past them on the path, an elderly man and woman holding hands, moving slowly but steadily together. Patricia watched them with a pang of something that might have been envy. "What if we cannot separate professional from personal?" she asked quietly. "What do you mean? What if working together brings up old feelings, old complications? What if it becomes difficult or awkward, or what if we fall in love again?" The words hung in the air like a challenge. Patricia felt her breath catch in her throat. "I did not say that. You did not have to." David's voice was gentle but steady. "Patricia, I need you to know something. I never fell out of love with you. Not completely. Not ever." The admission hit her like a physical blow. She stared at him, searching his face for signs that he was exaggerating or being dramatic, but she saw only truth. "David, I know that is not fair to say. I know you are vulnerable right now, that you need stability and support, not complications. But I also know that honesty is the only foundation for anything real between us." Patricia looked down at Lisa, who had fallen asleep in her stroller, one tiny fist curled against her cheek. "I cannot handle complicated right now," she said softly. "Then we will keep it simple," David promised. "Employer and employee, friends, people who care about each other but respect boundaries. Can we do that? Really?" David's smile was sad but genuine. "We can try. We are both adults now, Patrick. We both understand that some things are more important than what we want." The use of her old nickname sent warmth through her chest that she tried to ignore. "Lisa is the most important thing," she said firmly. "I know. She always will be. Any man who becomes part of your life will have to understand that." "Any man. Any man," David repeated quietly. "Including me." Sunday afternoon found Patricia in the hotel's business center, using the computers to research David's company and the position he had offered her. She had told him she needed to make an informed decision, and he had agreed immediately, even providing her with detailed job descriptions and organizational charts. Nexus Technologies was impressive in ways she had not fully understood. What had started as David's college dream of democratizing technology access had grown into a multinational corporation that genuinely seemed to prioritize social responsibility alongside profit. Their educational initiatives provided technology access to underserved schools. Their environmental programs funded clean energy research. Their community partnerships supported local businesses and non-profits in dozens of cities. It was exactly the kind of work Patricia had dreamed of doing in college, before she had convinced herself that dreams were impractical. Finding everything you need. Patricia looked up to see David in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. He had changed from his morning jeans into dress pants and a button-down shirt, and she realized he must have been working while she researched. "You have built something amazing," she said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "This is not just a technology company. It is a force for good." That was always the goal. David settled into the chair beside her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something subtle and expensive that suited the man he had become. "I wanted to prove that businesses could be profitable and ethical simultaneously. And you have. The numbers are incredible. The impact reports, the testimonials from schools and communities." Patricia gestured at the computer screen. "David, you are changing lives." "We are changing lives. I do not do this alone." Patricia studied his profile as he looked at the computer screen. "When did you know that Nexus would become this successful?" "Honestly, I did not. For the first 3 years, I was convinced we would fail. I kept waiting for investors to realize I had no idea what I was doing, but you kept going. I kept going because I remembered what you used to say about making a difference, about using whatever talents you have to leave the world better than you found it." Patricia felt her chest tighten. "I said that. You said it a lot, usually when I was complaining about professors or assignments or how pointless everything seemed." David turned to look at her directly. "You were the one who taught me that success without purpose is just accumulation." "I do not remember being that wise." "You were 22 years old and already understood things it took me years to figure out." David's voice grew softer. "You shaped who I became, Patricia, even after you left." The weight of his words settled between them like a bridge. Neither was quite ready to cross. "I need to ask you something," Patricia said, looking back at the computer screen. "And I need you to be completely honest. Always. If I take this job, if I work for Nexus, will I be able to do real work, make real decisions, build programs that matter? Or will I be a figurehead, a director with no actual authority?" David was quiet for a moment. "You will have complete autonomy over the Community Outreach Division, a budget of $15 million annually, a staff of 12 people. The authority to approve partnerships, design programs, and allocate resources as you see fit. $15 million? That is our current annual commitment to community programs. With the right leadership, I would like to see that number grow." Patricia stared at him. "You would trust me with $15 million. "I would trust you with $15 billion, David said simply. "Patricia, Money is just a tool. What matters is having someone with the right values wielding that tool. You have those values. How can you be so sure? Because I watched you choose your daughter over everything else that felt safe or secure. Because you walked away from financial stability rather than raise Lisa in a toxic environment. Because even when you had nothing, your first concern was still her well-being, not your own comfort. Patricia felt tears threatening again. You make me sound much braver than I felt. Courage is not the absence of fear, Patrick. It is doing the right thing despite being afraid. She looked at him sitting beside her. This man who had built an empire while somehow remaining the same person who had held her hand during college thunderstorms, and felt something shift definitively inside her chest. I want the job, she said quietly. David's smile was brilliant. You want the job. I want the job. I want to build something meaningful. I want Lisa to grow up seeing her mother make a difference in the world. Patricia, that is... David stopped, seeming to struggle for words. That is the best news I have had in years. When would I start? Whenever you are ready. We can set up temporary offices here in Millbrook Falls while you look for permanent housing. Or if you prefer to relocate to Pittsburgh, where our main offices are located. Here, Patricia said immediately. I want to stay here. This is where I grew up, where I have roots. If I am going to do community outreach, I want to start in my own community. Then here it is. David extended his hand formally. Welcome to Nexus Technologies, Director Wildavids. Patricia shook his hand, feeling the warmth of his skin, the strength in his fingers, the weight of possibility in the gesture. Thank you, she said, for believing in me when I could not believe in myself. Thank you for giving me the chance to work with you again, David replied. I have missed your mind, Patricia, your perspective, your heart. As they sat there with their hands still joined across the small table, Patricia realized that accepting David's job offer meant more than financial security or professional opportunity. It meant choosing to let him back into her life permanently. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, for the first time in years, it felt like hope. Monday morning brought the first real cold snap of autumn, and Patricia woke to find frost covering the hotel windows in delicate patterns that reminded her of lace. Lisa was stirring in her crib, making the soft noises that meant she would want breakfast soon. As Patricia prepared the baby's bottle, she realized this was her last morning as a guest in David's suite. Tonight, they would move to the corporate apartment Nexus maintained in downtown Millbrook Falls, where she would begin the transition from refugee to professional. The thought should have excited her. Instead, she felt a strange reluctance to leave the cocoon of safety David had created for them here. Good morning, David's voice came from the kitchen, where she could hear him moving around, probably making coffee. Good morning, she called back, settling into the bedroom chair to feed Lisa. You are up early. Conference call with Tokyo. The joys of international business. Through the partially open door, Patricia could see David at the kitchen counter, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in the confident, authoritative tone she was still learning to associate with him. This was David Jones, the CEO. The man who made decisions affecting thousands of employees and millions of customers. It was strange to think that in a few hours she would be working for this version of David. Sorry about that, David said 20 minutes later, appearing in the bedroom doorway with coffee for both of them. Crisis averted, hopefully. What kind of crisis? The boring kind. Regulatory compliance issues in 3 different countries. David handed her the coffee and settled into the chair across from her. How did you sleep? Well, better than I have in months, actually. Patricia adjusted Lisa's position as the baby finished her bottle. I keep expecting to wake up and find this was all a dream. What would you do if it were? The question caught her off guard. I do not know. Find a job somewhere, I suppose. Rent a small apartment. Try to build a life. You still can, you know. If working for Nexus feels like too much pressure, or if you change your mind about anything, you can still choose independence. Patricia studied his face, looking for signs of doubt or regret, but saw only genuine concern for her well-being. Are you having second thoughts about hiring me? Not about hiring you, no. But I am wondering if I am asking too much too soon. You just got out of a controlling marriage. The last thing you need is another situation where a man is making decisions about your life. You are not making decisions about my life, David. You are offering me the opportunity to make my own decisions. I hope that is how you will always see it. Patricia shifted Lisa to her shoulder, patting the baby's back gently. Can I ask you something? Anything. What happened to you after college? After we ended things. David was quiet for a moment, his gaze focused on Lisa rather than Patricia. I was angry for a long time, he said finally. Hurt? I threw myself into work, into building the company, partly because I needed the distraction, and partly because I wanted to prove you wrong about choosing security over dreams. David, I am not saying that to make you feel guilty. I'm saying it because those feelings drove me to take risks I might not have taken otherwise, to push harder, work longer, refuse to accept limitations. David looked up at her then. In a strange way, losing you made me more determined to succeed. And personally, relationships, a few, nothing serious, nothing that lasted. David's smile was rueful. Maya used to say I was emotionally unavailable. She said I compared every woman to someone I could not have. Patricia felt a flutter of something that might have been jealousy, followed immediately by guilt. She had no right to feel possessive about David's past relationships. I am sorry, she said quietly. I never wanted to hurt you. I know. And I understand why you made the choice you did. 25 years old, no family money, facing an uncertain future with someone who had big dreams but no concrete plans. David stood up, moving to the window. Thomas Henderson represented stability, I represented risk. You represented everything I wanted and was too scared to reach for. The words slipped out before Patricia could stop them. David turned slowly, his expression unreadable. What do you mean? Patricia felt heat rise in her cheeks. I mean, I loved you, David, completely. That is why I was so scared. Loving you felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, not knowing if there was solid ground below or just empty air. And Thomas felt like solid ground. Thomas felt like a safety net. But safety nets can become prisons if you never learn to walk the tightrope. They looked at each other across the elegant hotel room, years of unspoken truth hanging between them like morning mist. And now, David asked quietly, now I am trying to learn to walk the tightrope, Patricia said. With Lisa, with this job, with... She paused, not quite ready to finish the thought. With me. With whatever this is between us. David moved closer, close enough that Patricia could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. What do you want this to be between us, Patricia? The question hung in the air, demanding honesty she was not sure she was ready to give. I want... Patricia started, then stopped. Lisa had fallen asleep against her shoulder, and the baby's peaceful breathing seemed to emphasize the weight of the moment. What do you want? David repeated gently. I want to believe that people can have second chances, Patricia said finally. I want to believe that making mistakes does not mean you do not deserve happiness. I want to believe that love can be both safe and adventurous at the same time. Do you believe those things? Patricia looked down at Lisa, then back at David. "I am learning to—" David reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and touched her face gently. "Then we will learn together," he said softly. One day at a time. As Patricia leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth of his palm against her cheek, she realized that somewhere in the past week she had begun to fall in love with David Jones all over again. This time she was not running away. The corporate apartment occupied the top floor of a renovated brick building in downtown Millbrook Falls, with tall windows that looked out over the river and hardwood floors that gleamed in the afternoon sunlight. It was smaller than the hotel suite, but still luxurious by any standard Patricia understood. "The nursery is through here," David said, leading her down a hallway lined with built-in bookshelves. "Caroline had it set up yesterday." Patricia stepped into the room and felt her breath catch. Someone had created a perfect space for Lisa. Soft yellow walls, white furniture, a rocking chair positioned near windows that faced east to catch the morning light. A mobile of silver stars hung over the crib, catching the light and casting gentle patterns on the ceiling. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "Caroline said yellow was gender-neutral and calming." David leaned against the doorframe, watching Patricia explore the room. "If you want to change anything—" "No, it is perfect. She's going to love it here." Patricia set Lisa's carrier on the changing table and began unpacking the diaper bag, arranging supplies in the dresser drawers. The simple domestic tasks felt grounding after the unreality of the past week. "Your office is being set up in the building next door," David said. "Same street, 3-minute walk. You will have a view of the park." "Riverside Park? The same one where I found you. I thought you might like being able to see it." Patricia straightened, holding a stack of tiny shirts. "That was thoughtful. Or masochistic. I'm not sure which." The admission surprised her. "What do you mean?" David moved into the room, straightening books on the shelf that were already perfectly arranged. "I mean, that park is where we used to plan our future together. It is also where I found you at your lowest point. It is where you chose me over Thomas, even if you did not realize that is what you were doing. David, every time you look out your office window, you are going to see the place where your life changed, where our lives changed. I am not sure if that is inspiration or torture." Patricia set down the baby clothes and moved closer to him. "It is possibility." "What?" "That park represents possibility. The possibility of young love, the possibility of new beginnings, the possibility of second chances." Patricia reached out and touched his hand. "That is what I want to see when I look out that window." David turned his hand over, intertwining their fingers. "What if I told you that I bought this building specifically because the office had a view of that park? I would ask you why. Because I have been thinking about second chances for 7 years. Because I never stopped hoping that someday, somehow, you might be ready to take that leap of faith with me." Patricia felt her heart skip. "David, that is crazy, obsessive, pathetic, romantic," she finished softly. "It is the most romantic thing anyone has ever done for me." They stood in Lisa's nursery, hands joined, looking at each other with the weight of 7 years and 1,000 unspoken feelings between them. "I am scared," Patricia admitted. "Of what? Of messing this up again, of hurting you again, of making decisions based on fear instead of love." David brought their joined hands to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Then we will be scared together," he said. "And we will make decisions based on what is best for Lisa, what is best for you, what is best for all of us. All of us. You, me, Lisa. However this works out, we are connected now. We are going to be in each other's lives. I want that to be a good thing for everyone involved." Patricia looked around the nursery, at the care and thought that had gone into creating this space for her daughter, at the man who had arranged it all without expecting anything in return. "I think I am falling in love with you again," she said quietly. David's eyes widened. "Patricia, I know I should not. I know it is too soon, too complicated, too risky, but I cannot help it. You make me feel like the person I used to be, the person I want to be again, the person you have always been." David corrected. "You just forgot for a while. Will you help me remember?" Instead of answering with words, David cupped her face in his hands and leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, when she tilted her face up toward his, he kissed her gently. It was nothing like their passionate college kisses. This was soft, tentative, full of question and promise rather than demand. It was the kiss of two adults who understood that some things were worth waiting for, worth doing right. When they broke apart, Patricia felt tears on her cheeks. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed you so much. I missed you too," David replied, his thumb brushing away her tears. "Every single day." From her carrier, Lisa made a small sound, and they both turned toward her, laughing at the interruption. "Someone wants attention," Patricia said, moving to lift her daughter. "Smart girl," David said, watching Patricia settle Lisa against her shoulder. "She knows a perfect moment when she sees one." As Patricia swayed gently with Lisa in the nursery David had created for them, surrounded by the careful evidence of his love and hope, she felt something she had not experienced in years. She felt home. Patricia's first official day as Director of Community Outreach for Nexus Technologies began with a crisis that had nothing to do with technology and everything to do with human nature. "The Riverside Elementary situation is getting worse," Caroline explained, setting a thick folder on Patricia's new desk. "The school board wants to reject our technology donation because some parents are convinced it is a publicity stunt." Patricia looked around her office, still amazed that she had an office at all. The space was smaller than David's suite, but elegant in its simplicity. Clean lines, lots of natural light, and yes, a perfect view of Riverside Park through the tall windows. "Tell me about the parents' concerns," she said, opening the folder. "They think Nexus is trying to buy influence in the district. There have been articles in the local paper questioning David's motives for investing in Millbrook Falls." Caroline's expression was carefully neutral. "Some people are saying he is only doing this because of his personal interest in a local resident." Patricia felt heat rise in her cheeks. "They are talking about me. The Henderson family has been very vocal about your relationship with David. They are suggesting that Nexus's charitable giving is really just an elaborate way to impress you." Patricia set down the folder with more force than necessary. "The Henderson family needs to mind their own business." "Agreed. But their influence in this town is still significant. If they convince enough people that our programs are not legitimate, then children suffer because adults cannot separate personal feelings from what is best for the community." Patricia stood up, pacing to the window. From here, she could see the bench where David had found her just 2 weeks ago. "What does David say about this?" "Mr. Jones said to handle it however you think best. He said community outreach was your department now." Patricia felt a flutter of anxiety. David had meant the comment as a show of faith in her abilities, but it also meant the success or failure of this program would rest entirely on her shoulders. "Set up a meeting with the school board," she said finally, "and invite the parents who have concerns. If they want to question our motives, they can do it face to face." "Are you sure? That could get heated." "I am sure. I have spent 5 years letting other people control the narrative about my life. It is time I started speaking for myself. 2 hours later, Patricia stood in the Riverside Elementary Library, facing 15 adults who looked at her with expressions ranging from skeptical to openly hostile. She recognized several faces from her years in Millbrook Falls, people who had been friendly when she was Thomas Henderson's wife, but now seemed to view her as a source of scandal. "Thank you all for coming," Patricia began, keeping her voice steady. "I understand you have concerns about Nexus Technologies' proposed donation to the school district." "We have concerns about the strings attached," said Margaret Kellner, whose daughter was in 3rd grade. "What does David Jones want in return for his generosity?" "He wants children to have access to technology that will prepare them for the future," Patricia replied. "That is all." "Come on, Patricia," said Bill Morrison, who had been Thomas's golf partner. "We all know what this is really about. Jones is trying to impress you by throwing money around." "Mr. Morrison, I am going to say this once, and I hope everyone in this room hears me clearly." Patricia looked around the group, making eye contact with each person. "My personal life has nothing to do with Nexus Technologies' commitment to education." "But you are sleeping with the CEO," called out someone from the back. Patricia felt her temper flare, but she kept her voice level. "My relationship with David Jones is private, but even if it were not, that relationship began after I was offered this position, not before." "So you admit there is a relationship?" Margaret pressed. "I admit that I am a single woman who has every right to build whatever relationships I choose, with whomever I choose, without interference from people who threw me away the moment I was no longer useful to them." The room went quiet. Patricia could see people shifting uncomfortably, perhaps remembering their own silence when the Henderson family had cast her out. "The question before us today," Patricia continued, "is whether you care more about gossip or about giving your children opportunities. Nexus Technologies is offering $500,000 worth of computers, tablets, and software to this district. That technology will benefit every student in every grade. But if you would rather reject that gift because you disapprove of my personal choices, that is your right." "What if things do not work out between you and Jones?" asked Sarah Chen, whose son was in Lisa's age group. "What if he pulls funding when the relationship ends? Then you will have had however many months or years of benefit from the equipment," Patricia replied. But more importantly, that question assumes that David Jones is petty enough to punish children for adult drama. Do any of you honestly believe that about him?" She saw several people shake their heads reluctantly. David Jones built his company on the principle that technology should serve people, not profit. He has donated millions of dollars to school districts across the country, most of them in places where he has no personal connections whatsoever. His commitment to education is not dependent on me or anyone else. Patricia moved closer to the group, her voice growing more passionate. "I grew up in this town. I went to school in this district. I know what it is like to graduate without the technical skills that colleges and employers now expect. I do not want that for your children. I do not want them to be disadvantaged because we let politics and gossip interfere with their education." The room was completely quiet now, everyone focused on her words. "So here is what I propose," Patricia said. "Accept the donation, use the technology, judge the program by its results, not by rumors about my personal life. If the equipment helps your children learn, if test scores improve, if teachers report better engagement, then you will know the program was worth supporting. If not, you can reject future donations." Margaret Kellner raised her hand tentatively. "What about oversight? How do we know the equipment will be used appropriately?" "I will personally oversee the implementation," Patricia promised. "Monthly reports, regular meetings with teachers and administrators, complete transparency about how the technology is being used. And if there are problems, Then we fix them, together. Because despite what some people in this room seem to think, I am not the enemy here. I am a parent too. I want what is best for all of our children. After an hour of questions and discussion, the vote was unanimous to accept the Nexus donation. As people filed out of the library, Sarah Chen approached Patricia. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. I let the Henderson family poison my thinking about you. What they did to you after Lisa was born, it was wrong. I should have spoken up. Thank you, Patricia said. That means more than you know. For what it is worth, I think David Jones is lucky to have found you again. And I think you are lucky to have found each other. Patricia drove home to the apartment that evening, feeling exhausted but victorious. She had fought for something she believed in and won. More importantly, she had found her voice again after years of keeping quiet to avoid conflict. When she opened the apartment door, she found David sitting on the living room floor, playing peekaboo with Lisa, who was giggling in her bouncy seat. How did it go? He asked, looking up with an expression of barely contained anxiety. We got the donation approved, Patricia said, setting down her briefcase. David's face broke into a grin. You got the donation approved. Caroline said you handled the whole thing yourself. I did. And David. Patricia knelt down beside him, close enough to touch. Thank you for letting me handle it myself. For trusting me to represent the company. Patricia, you are not just representing the company. You are building something entirely your own. David reached out and took her hand. I am so proud of you. As Patricia looked around the apartment that was becoming home, at the man who believed in her, at the daughter who was the best part of her life, she realized that for the first time in years, she was proud of herself too. The legal documents arrived on a Tuesday morning in November, delivered by a courier who looked apologetic as he handed Patricia the certified envelope. She signed for it with hands that trembled only slightly, though her heart was racing as she recognized the return address, Henderson, Morrison and Associates. What is it? David asked, looking up from his laptop where he had been reviewing quarterly reports at her kitchen table. They had fallen into a comfortable routine over the past month. He would work from her apartment in the mornings while she got ready for the office, and they would share breakfast before walking to work together. Patricia opened the envelope and scanned the first page, feeling the blood drain from her face. Thomas is filing for custody of Lisa. David was beside her instantly, reading over her shoulder. His jaw tightened as he processed the legal language. Emergency petition for temporary custody based on allegations of parental abandonment and moral unfitness, he read aloud. They are claiming you abandoned your marriage and are living in an immoral relationship that creates an unsuitable environment for a child. They are saying I am an unfit mother. Patricia sank into a chair, the papers scattering across the table. They are going to try to take Lisa away from me. No, they are not. David's voice carried a steel edge she had rarely heard. This is harassment, Patricia. Thomas Henderson has no grounds for a custody claim. But what if a judge believes them? What if they convince someone that I really am unfit? Patricia felt panic rising in her chest. David, what if I lose her? David knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his. Look at me, Patrick. Look at me. She met his eyes, seeing the fierce protectiveness there. You are not going to lose Lisa. You are an excellent mother. You have provided her with love, care, stability, and security. No court in the country would take a child away from a mother like you. But the Henderson family has money, influence, and we have truth on our side. We have documentation of their abandonment, witnesses to their cruelty, evidence of your excellent care for Lisa. David squeezed her hands. More importantly, we have the best family law attorney in the state. Patricia blinked. We do. Rebecca Martinez. She has never lost a custody case involving domestic abandonment. I called her the day after Thomas came to the hotel. You have been planning for this. I have been preparing for this, David corrected. There is a difference. I hoped it would never be necessary, but I wanted to be ready if it was. Patricia pulled her hands free and stood up, pacing to the window. Below, she could see Lisa's stroller parked in the building's courtyard, where David had been pushing her around the garden paths every morning before work. They are doing this because of us, are not they? She said quietly, because we are together. They are doing this because they want control. Because Thomas's ego cannot handle the fact that you are better off without him. But if we were not together, if you were not in my life, they would not have grounds to claim moral unfitness. David was quiet for a long moment. When Patricia turned back toward him, his expression was carefully neutral. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that maybe we should take a step back, for Lisa's sake. Until this is resolved, you want me to move out? It was not a question, but Patricia answered anyway. I want you to be safe from this mess. I want Lisa to be safe. If that means putting distance between us until the custody issue is settled, no. The word was flat, final. David. No, Patricia. I am not going to let them win by making us afraid to live our lives. I'm not going to let Thomas Henderson's manipulations break us apart again. This is not about breaking us apart. This is about protecting Lisa. This is about you being so scared of losing her that you are willing to sacrifice everything else. David moved closer, his voice gentle but firm. I understand that fear, Patrick, but running away will not solve this problem. I am not running away. I am being practical. You are being terrified. And I do not blame you for that. But Patricia, if we let them control our relationship now, they will control it forever. There will always be another threat, another reason why we cannot be together. Patricia felt tears threatening. What if the judge sees our relationship as evidence that I am unstable? What if they decide a woman who left her marriage for another man is not fit to raise a child? Then we will appeal. And we will keep appealing until we find a judge who understands that leaving an abusive situation does not make you unfit for anything except accepting abuse. David reached for her hands again, his touch warm and steady. Patricia, I need you to hear me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to let you face this alone. We are going to fight this together, and we are going to win. How can you be so sure? Because I know you. I know the kind of mother you are, the kind of person you are. Any rational examination of the facts will show that Lisa is exactly where she belongs. Patricia wanted to believe him, but the fear was overwhelming. She had already lost so much, her marriage, her home, her sense of security. The thought of losing Lisa was unbearable. I need to call work, she said finally. Cancel my meetings for the day. I cannot concentrate on anything else right now. I already called Caroline. She is rescheduling everything for both of us. David, you do not have to. Yes, I do. His voice was quiet but absolute. We are in this together, Patricia. All of it. The good parts and the scary parts and everything in between. As Patricia looked at him standing in her kitchen, solid and sure and completely committed to her and Lisa, she felt something shift inside her chest. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something stronger. Trust, not just in David, but in herself, in the life they were building together. Okay, she said softly. Together. Together, David confirmed, and pulled her into his arms. The law offices of Martinez and Associates occupied the top floor of a glass building in downtown Pittsburgh, with views that stretched across the 3 rivers and beyond. Rebecca Martinez was a small woman with silver hair and eyes that seemed to see everything, the kind of person who radiated competence and quiet authority. "I have reviewed all the documentation Mr. Jones provided," she said, settling behind her desk with Patricia and David across from her. "The Henderson family's case is weak at best." "Weak?" Patricia felt a flutter of hope. "They are alleging abandonment of the marriage, but they have no evidence that you abandoned your child. In fact, all evidence points to the opposite. You took Lisa with you when you left. You have been her primary caregiver since birth, and you have provided excellent care despite difficult circumstances." Rebecca opened a thick folder and spread several documents across her desk. "More problematically for them, they are claiming you are an unfit mother while simultaneously demanding custody for a man who threw both you and the baby out of the house 3 weeks after delivery. No judge is going to find that compelling." "But what about the morality claims?" Patricia asked. "About David and me?" "What about them? You are 2 unmarried adults in a consensual relationship. You are not living together in an inappropriate way. You are not exposing the child to anything harmful, and Mr. Jones has no criminal record or history of violence." Rebecca's expression was almost amused. "The 1950s ended 60 years ago, Mrs. Will Davids. Courts do not generally remove children from stable homes because someone disapproves of the mother's dating choices." David leaned forward. "What is their real motivation here? Control and embarrassment," Rebecca said bluntly. "Thomas Henderson married a woman he thought would be grateful for his attention and easy to manage. When she proved to have a backbone and left him for someone more successful, his ego took a beating. This custody suit is his attempt to punish her and regain control. So what do? We respond to their petition with evidence of their own unfitness for custody. We document the abandonment, the cruelty, the complete lack of interest in the child's welfare. We show that Patricia has been an exemplary mother under difficult circumstances." Rebecca pulled out another set of documents. "I also recommend that we file a counter-petition for full legal custody and child support. Make them defend their own actions instead of just attacking yours." Patricia felt her stomach clench. "Child support? Thomas Henderson is Lisa's biological father. He has financial obligations regardless of his feelings about her gender. If he wants to play legal games, he can pay for the privilege. I do not want his money." "This is not about what you want, Patricia. This is about what Lisa deserves. She deserves financial support from both of her parents." Rebecca's voice softened slightly. "I understand your reluctance to take anything from them, but child support is not charity. It is Lisa's legal right." David reached over and took Patricia's hand. "Rebecca is right. This is about Lisa's future. Besides," Rebecca continued, "demanding child support sends a message that you are not going away quietly. It shows confidence in your position and forces them to consider the full consequences of this legal battle." They spent another hour reviewing strategy and timelines. The hearing was scheduled for December 15th, just over a month away. Rebecca would handle all the legal filings and evidence gathering, but Patricia would need to be prepared to testify about her marriage, the abandonment, and her relationship with David. "One more thing," Rebecca said as they prepared to leave. "The Henderson family may try to pressure you to settle out of court. They may offer to drop the custody claim in exchange for you agreeing to limited visitation or reduced child support. Do not accept any settlement without consulting me first." Why would they want to settle? Because they know they are going to lose. This kind of legal harassment only works if the victim is too scared or too poor to fight back. "You are neither." As they waited for the elevator, Patricia felt the weight of the coming battle settling on her shoulders. "Are you all right?" David asked quietly. "I am terrified," she admitted. But I am also angry, really, truly angry for the first time since this whole thing started. Good. Anger can be useful if you channel it properly. How do you mean? I mean, anger gives you clarity about what you are fighting for. You are not just defending yourself anymore, Patrick. You are fighting for Lisa's right to have a mother who loves her unconditionally. You are fighting for the principle that women cannot be discarded when they stop being convenient. Patricia looked at David as the elevator descended toward the parking garage. When did you become so wise about fighting battles? When I fell in love with someone worth fighting for, he said simply. The words hit Patricia like a physical blow. David had said he loved her in college, had hinted at ongoing feelings, but this was the first time since their reunion that he had said the words directly. David, I love you, Patricia. I am in love with you. Not with who you used to be, not with some idealized memory, but with who you are right now. The mother, the professional, the woman who stood up to a room full of critics and made them listen. The elevator opened, but neither of them moved. I love you too, Patricia whispered. I am in love with you, completely, and that terrifies me almost as much as losing Lisa. Why? Because loving you feels like jumping off a cliff again. Because I trusted my heart once, and it led me into 5 years of misery. David stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his brown eyes. Your heart did not lead you into misery, Patrick. Your fear did. You chose Thomas because he felt safe, not because you loved him. And you feel dangerous. I feel like possibility, like adventure. Like all the things you were too scared to want when you were 25. David reached up and cupped her face gently. But I also feel like home, like safety, like the kind of love that makes you stronger instead of smaller. Patricia leaned into his touch, feeling the truth of his words resonate in her chest. I want to believe that. Then believe it. Trust your heart this time, Patricia. Trust us. As they stood in the elevator together, Patricia realized that somewhere in the past month she had begun to do exactly that. The fear was still there, but it was no longer the loudest voice in her head. Love was. The mediation conference was scheduled for a grey December morning in a bland office building that smelled of coffee and fear. Patricia arrived early. Dressed in the navy blue suit David had bought her for professional meetings, carrying a briefcase full of documentation that told the story of her marriage and its aftermath. Thomas and his lawyer were already seated at the conference table when she and Rebecca entered the room. Thomas looked older than Patricia remembered, his face drawn and his eyes avoiding hers. His attorney, a sharp-faced woman in expensive clothing, watched Patricia with undisguised hostility. "Good morning," Rebecca said pleasantly, setting her own briefcase on the table. "I trust everyone received our counter-petition for full custody and child support." "This is ridiculous," Thomas's lawyer snapped. "My client is the biological father. He has rights. Rights come with responsibilities," Rebecca replied calmly. "Perhaps we should discuss how your client has fulfilled his responsibilities to his daughter." The mediator, a tired-looking man in his 60s, opened the case file and looked around the table. "Let me understand the situation. Mr. Henderson is seeking custody of a 4-month-old infant he has had no contact with since her birth. Mrs. Wildavids is seeking to maintain full custody and establish child support. Is that correct?" "That is correct," both lawyers said simultaneously. "Mr. Henderson, can you explain why you believe a change in custody is in the child's best interests?" Thomas cleared his throat nervously. My ex-wife abandoned our marriage to live with another man. She is creating an unstable environment for our daughter." "When did this abandonment occur?" "In October. She left our home without notice." Rebecca leaned forward. May I clarify the timeline for the record? Mr. Henderson, when was your daughter born? September 28th. And when did you last see your daughter? Thomas's face flushed. That is not... Please answer the question, Mr. Henderson. The day she was born. So you have had no contact with your 4-month-old daughter for over 3 months? I have been dealing with the separation. And when you say Mrs. Wildavids abandoned your home, what exactly happened? Thomas looked at his lawyer, who nodded reluctantly. There was a disagreement about family planning. My parents felt that... Your parents felt what, Mr. Henderson? Patricia watched Thomas struggle, seeing the moment when he realized how his own words would sound in this neutral setting. They felt we should try again for a boy, he admitted finally. The mediator made a note. I see. And you told Mrs. Wildavids to leave because she had not produced a male child. It was not that simple. Please explain how it was more complex. Rebecca sat back in her chair, letting Thomas dig his own grave with each answer. Patricia felt a strange sense of detachment, as if she were watching someone else's life being dissected. My family has certain expectations about inheritance, about carrying on the family name. So you asked your wife and newborn daughter to leave your home because the child was female. I asked them to leave because Patricia was being unreasonable about family planning. What specifically did you consider unreasonable? Thomas was sweating now, his lawyer looking increasingly uncomfortable. She refused to discuss trying again for a boy. She said she was done having children. 3 weeks after giving birth. She was being emotional. Patricia felt something snap inside her chest. She had been quiet through the questioning, letting Rebecca handle the legal strategy, but she could not stay silent any longer. Emotional, she said, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. Thomas looked at her for the first time since she had entered the room. I was emotional because my husband cared more about hypothetical future sons than about the daughter he already had, Patricia continued, her voice growing stronger. I was emotional because your mother called my baby girl useless and worthless. I was emotional because the man I married disappeared the moment Lisa was born, female instead of male. Patricia, please, Thomas started. Do not. Patricia stood up, feeling a strength she had never known she possessed. Do not ask me to be reasonable about abandoning my daughter. Do not ask me to be understanding about your family's medieval attitudes toward women. Do not ask me to pretend that throwing a 3-week-old baby out in the rain was anything other than cruel and unforgivable. The room was completely silent. You want to know why I left you, Thomas? I left you because I finally understood that you never saw me as a person. I was an incubator for your family's expectations. When I failed to produce the right kind of child, I became disposable. Patricia moved closer to the table, her voice never rising but carrying absolute conviction. But Lisa is not disposable. She is not a disappointment or a mistake or a failure. She is a perfect, beautiful, innocent child who deserves better than a father who sees her as worthless. I never said she was worthless. You called her a burden. You threw her out of her own home. You abandoned her for 4 months, and now you want custody because your ego cannot handle the fact that I am better off without you. Thomas's face was white now, his lawyer frantically taking notes. I am not the unfit parent in this room, Thomas. You are. And every day you stay away from Lisa, every day you prioritize your wounded pride over her welfare, you prove exactly how unfit you are. Patricia sat back down, her hands steady, her voice calm. I do not need David's money to prove my worth. I do not need anyone's validation to know that I am a good mother. I know who I am, and I know what my daughter deserves. She deserves a parent who loves her unconditionally, who sees her as a blessing instead of a burden, who would never, ever use her as a weapon in adult conflicts. The mediator looked around the table, his expression grim. Mr. Henderson, do you have any evidence that your daughter is being harmed or neglected in her current living situation? She is living with a man who is not her father. That is not evidence of harm or neglect. Do you have any evidence of actual endangerment? Thomas looked at his lawyer, who shook her head slightly. No, he admitted. Then I am going to recommend that this petition be dismissed and that we move forward with discussions of child support and visitation rights. Thomas's lawyer leaned over and whispered something urgent in his ear. He listened, his face growing paler, then shook his head. I would like to withdraw the custody petition, he said quietly. And the child support discussion. Thomas looked at Patricia one last time, and she saw something in his expression that might have been recognition or shame. I will pay whatever amount the court determines is appropriate, he said. As they left the building an hour later, Rebecca turned to Patricia with something approaching admiration. That was magnificent, she said. I have never seen anyone demolish a case so thoroughly with pure truth. I was not trying to demolish anything, Patricia replied. I was just tired of being afraid. David was waiting in the lobby, and Patricia walked straight into his arms, feeling the solid warmth of his embrace anchor her to the present moment. How did it go? He asked against her hair. It is over, she said simply. It is finally over. Christmas morning arrived with fresh snow and the kind of crystalline sunlight that made everything look like a postcard. Patricia woke in David's arms in the bedroom of the apartment that had somehow become theirs without any formal discussion or decision. They had been sleeping in the same bed for 2 weeks now, since the night after the mediation, when Patricia had finally admitted that she was tired of being careful, tired of holding back from what she wanted most. Merry Christmas, Patrick, David murmured against her neck, his voice rough with sleep. Merry Christmas, she replied, turning in his arms to face him. Even with his hair mussed and his eyes still heavy with sleep, he was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Lisa is awake, David said, noting the soft sounds from the nursery. I can hear her talking to herself. They had discovered that Lisa was an early riser who entertained herself for 20 or 30 minutes each morning, babbling to her mobile and practicing the new sounds she was learning to make. She is probably wondering where all the presents came from, Patricia said, thinking of the pile of wrapped packages that had appeared under their tree over the past week. Speaking of presents, David said, reaching toward the nightstand, I have something for you. David, we agreed no expensive gifts. It is not expensive, he said, producing a small wrapped box. It is practical. Patricia sat up in bed, suddenly nervous. The box was too small to be jewelry, too large to be earrings. She had no idea what to expect. Inside, nested in tissue paper, was a set of keys. Keys to the house on Elm Street, David said, watching her face carefully. The blue Victorian with the wraparound porch and the big yard. Patricia stared at the keys. The house that has been for sale since summer. David, that house costs exactly what you can afford with your salary and the child support from Thomas. That is impossible. That house is worth at least $400,000. It was worth $400,000. The seller accepted a lower offer in exchange for guaranteed closing and cash payment. Patricia looked up at him, beginning to understand. How much lower? Low enough that your mortgage payments will be manageable on your income alone. Low enough that you will never have to depend on anyone else for housing security. David, you bought me a house. I bought you independence, he corrected. I bought you the security of knowing that no one can ever throw you out again, that Lisa will always have a home. Patricia felt tears threatening. I cannot accept this. It is too much. The deed is in your name and Lisa's name. It has nothing to do with me legally. If you hate the house, you can sell it. If you never want to see me again, you can keep it. It is yours regardless of anything that happens between us." "Why?" David reached over and cupped her face gently. "Because I love you. Because I want you to feel safe. Because I want you to make choices based on what you want, not on what you can afford or what you are afraid of losing." Patricia looked down at the keys in her palm, feeling their weight. They represented everything she had been afraid to want: stability, security, a future that belonged to her. "There is one more thing," David said quietly. "David, I cannot handle any more surprises. This one is just a question." He took the keys from her hand and replaced them with something else. Patricia looked down to see a simple gold band, elegant and timeless, with a small diamond that caught the morning light. "Patricia Wildavids," David said, his voice steady but his eyes vulnerable, "will you marry me?" Patricia felt her world tilt on its axis. "David, I know it seems fast. I know we just got back together, just figured out how to be in each other's lives again. But Patricia, I have loved you for 15 years. I have waited 7 years to get a second chance with you. I do not want to waste any more time being careful or scared or practical. What about Lisa? About being a stepfather? About all the complications? I love Lisa. I have loved her since the moment I saw her sleeping in your arms in the rain. I want to be her father in every way that matters. I want to help you raise her, teach her, protect her, love her." David shifted closer, his voice growing more intense. "I want to wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my life. I want to build something real and lasting and beautiful with you. I want to prove that love can be both safe and adventurous, both practical and magical." Patricia looked at the ring, then at David's face, seeing the same boy who had held her hand during thunderstorms and the man who had built an empire while never forgetting what mattered most. "Are you sure?" she asked quietly. "Are you absolutely sure this is what you want? Because I come with baggage, David. I come with fears and insecurities and a baby who will always be my first priority." "I am sure," David said without hesitation. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." Patricia thought about everything that had brought them to this moment. The broken marriage, the rainy night in the park, the slow rebuilding of trust and love, the battle for Lisa's future. She thought about the woman she had been when she chose safety over love, and the woman she had become through losing everything and finding herself again. "Yes," she said, surprising herself with how clear and strong her voice sounded. "Yes, I will marry you." David's smile was brilliant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. "I have one condition," Patricia said as he pulled her into his arms. "Anything. No more surprises for at least a month. I need time to process having a house and a fiancé and a completely different life than I had 6 months ago." "Deal," David laughed, kissing her thoroughly. "Although I should probably mention that I already called my sister. She is flying in for New Year's Eve to meet you and Lisa." "David, that is the last surprise. I promise." "Well, except for the fact that I may have also arranged for your college roommate to come for the wedding, and I might have already put a deposit down on the church where your parents were married." Patricia silenced him with a kiss, tasting joy and possibility and the kind of love that made everything else seem simple by comparison. From the nursery came the sound of Lisa's increasingly urgent demands for attention, and they broke apart laughing. "Duty calls," Patricia said, starting to get up. "We call," David corrected, following her toward the nursery. "All of us together." As they went to get their daughter on Christmas morning, Patricia realized that for the first time in her adult life, she was exactly where she belonged, 1 year later, Patricia stood in the kitchen of the house on Elm Street, watching through the window as David pushed Lisa's swing in the backyard. Lisa was walking now, 15 months old and fearless, chattering constantly in the combination of real words and baby gibberish that David seemed to understand perfectly. The house had turned out to be everything Patricia had dreamed of and more. The wraparound porch was perfect for morning coffee and evening conversations. The big yard gave Lisa space to explore safely. The extra bedrooms held possibility for the future they were building together. "Higher!" Lisa demanded from her swing, and David obliged, sending her soaring toward the October sky with the kind of careful attention he brought to everything involving her well-being. They had been married in June, a small ceremony in the church where Patricia's parents had exchanged vows 35 years earlier. Lisa had been the flower girl, toddling down the aisle in a white dress and dropping petals with the seriousness of someone performing an important job. The community outreach program had grown beyond anything Patricia had imagined possible. They had expanded to serve 12 school districts, provided technology access to over 5,000 students, and established partnerships with local businesses and non-profits that were creating real change in people's lives. Thomas had surprised everyone by becoming a reliable source of child support and actually requesting regular visitation with Lisa. He was still awkward around her, still clearly uncomfortable with the realities of parenting, but he was trying. Patricia had decided that trying was enough, that Lisa deserved to know her biological father, even if he would never be the parent David had become. "Mama!" Lisa called from the swing, waving enthusiastically when she spotted Patricia in the window. Patricia waved back, feeling the familiar surge of fierce love that hit her every time she looked at her daughter. Lisa was thriving in ways that had nothing to do with money or status or family expectations. She was confident, curious, joyful, everything a child should be. David had kept his promise about no more surprises, with one notable exception. Last month, he had quietly arranged for Nexus Technologies to establish a scholarship fund for single mothers pursuing higher education. The Patricia Wildavids Education Foundation would help women like her rebuild their lives after leaving difficult situations. Patricia had cried when he told her, not because she was overwhelmed, but because she was proud. Proud of what they had built together, proud of the difference they were making, proud of the life they had created from the ashes of her worst day. The back door opened, and David came in carrying Lisa, who immediately reached for Patricia with juice-sticky hands. "Someone needs a bath before dinner," Patricia said, taking her daughter and kissing her forehead. "Someone also needs to tell you something important," David said, his tone carefully casual, in the way that meant he was planning something. "David Jones, you promise no more surprises." "This is not a surprise. This is an announcement." Patricia set Lisa down in her high chair and turned to face her husband fully. "What kind of announcement?" "The kind where I tell you that I love you more today than I did yesterday, and less than I will tomorrow. The kind where I say that watching you become the woman you were always meant to be has been the greatest privilege of my life, David. The kind where I remind you that I always knew you were my greatest treasure. I just had to wait for the world to realize it." Patricia felt tears spring to her eyes at the echo of her own thoughts. And the kind where I tell you that starting next month, I'm going to be working from home 3 days a week so I can spend more time with you and Lisa and maybe start thinking about adding to our family. Adding to our family, if you want to, when you are ready. Lisa could use a little brother or sister to boss around. Patricia looked at her husband, at her daughter happily smearing applesauce on her high chair tray, at the home they had built together in the space between heartbreak and healing. "I want to," she said simply. "I want everything with you." David crossed the kitchen and pulled her into his arms, and Patricia realized that somewhere along the way, she had stopped being afraid of wanting too much. Love, it turned out, was not about choosing between safety and adventure. It was about finding someone who made you feel safe enough to be adventurous, brave enough to want everything, strong enough to believe you deserved it all. As David kissed her in their kitchen, while Lisa babbled happily in her high chair, Patricia understood that she had finally learned the difference between settling and choosing, between surviving and thriving, between being saved and being truly, completely loved. It had taken her 33 years to get here, but she was exactly where she belonged. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.